Welcome back to Grandpa's Garage. This time coming to you from Winterpeg, Manitoba. Welcome to my small little garage here. It has been a full year since I completed a fairly extensive refinishing project for my daughter-in-law Jennifer. And this year she's asked me to tackle this lovely little end table. Today, going to get started stripping it, and then we'll see what kind of stain she's interested in having it finished in. Off we go. Tools of the trade today are going to be this circa 1850 soft strip. It is biodegradable, doesn't have a really strong stench to it, doesn't work quite as fast as some of the really poly strippers of olden days. But in today's world, with low VOCs becoming commonplace, I found this stuff works extremely well. You just have to give it a bit more time. Tools of the trade today are really simple. Paintbrush to apply this stuff. You need it to sit and saturate for a good 15-20 minutes, and then start to move it around with scrubbies. I find work the best. These are a couple of different grits of Scotch-Brite, and because a project like this has a lot of different shapes and corners and small areas to get into, I've found that a paintbrush with good stiff bristles can really help to ease getting in there. So I've just applied one medium wet coat, and we're going to let this sit for a good 20 minutes or so and come and see if the paint is starting to soften. Our 20 minutes to half an hour has gone by. Actually, about halfway through, I came back in and just took the brush and gave another wet coat to keep everything moist. And you'll see now, literally, this just wipes away. I'm hardly having to put any pressure on at all. My scrapers aren't sharp. They're round edged to not gouge into the wood. Lots of paper towel. I'll just give you an idea of just how easily this is to remove. After our first good scrape of the surface, you can see there's areas like this that still had paint, possibly even from previous refinishings over the years. And this may have been done with a different product. And so I've just applied more stripper to it, and we'll let it sit for another 20 minutes while I work on around the edges and see if this starts to lift. It will all require washing down with the stripper and good old soap and water at some point when we're finished here. And then it's going to require, of course, complete sanding and refinishing before we get to the priming, till we get to the staining. So off we go on getting rid of all this stuff around the edges. I don't know if I can bring this close enough. You should be able to see how the paint has all started to crack. And this will literally push off with my finger. Speaking of fingers, look, bad guy not wearing gloves. I know. Off we go. This is tedious work, but patience wins out in the long run. It's not... a lot of times it can be difficult just to find exactly the right shaped tool to get into the little grooves and notches that you need it to. And once you do, you just have to plug away. All of these little flakes that you see, I will get off with the green Scotch Brite pad, if I can pronounce that correctly, that's been saturated with more of this remover. And then right after that, everything will get washed well with mineral spirits to clean up the top and remove all the rest of the excess. Here we are at stage 2, or part 2. First part, get rid of that white paint that was on there. You saw how simply that came off. It literally just one light coat and it was gone. However, for this particular piece of furniture, the white paint had been placed over top of the original, possibly a shellac finish, possibly a little newer varathane, but I'm really thinking it was a shellac. So the whole process now has to be repeated. But what's going to be slightly different now is things get messy. So even I've got gloves on. I'm actually going to be taking the stripper, reworking it into the top coat, and then I'm going to be using stripper soaked in this and massaging the whole surface. So yes, it gets messy, but I need to try and get that shellac off. And how I was able to notice that there was still another coating to go was as I was moving that first one, I was getting this buildup on my scraper. So off we go, part 2. I'm going to cut some strips of a 3M quality scrubber. It's not so plasticky. The pores in it are very tight and it's very scratchy. Yeah, I can feel it. Quite a difference in what it's doing on the surface, and I can actually see the brown stain being ripped off the material now. Now, as I'm working this stuff, I can actually feel it go from slippery to quite coarse feedback. I can almost feel like I'm sanding the wood now. Last item on the list is some mineral spirits. And we're going to wash this all down. So having stripped this off, we can now see what a gorgeous wood grain and what this table is going to look like when it's stained. So lots more work to do, but that was a quick get started at stripping some old paint off and getting into the varnish. More tomorrow. Well, good day again. I can start off by telling you that the top surface here has turned out beautifully. It is ready for sanding. However, now I've got to finish all this nitpicky stuff. So we'll press on with this and we'll let you know how it goes later. Okay, well, our 20 minutes, more like half an hour, has gone by. So what I'd like to show you is what I mentioned about using a stiff brush. So these are just 99-cent throwaway, but they're natural bristle brushes. so they can be used with chemicals. Even lacquer thinners doesn't eat these brushes up. So I've taken one of these and trimmed it down so that it's nice and stiff. So you continue to keep your brush really moistened in the removal chemical, and you'll see that, I know it doesn't just peel off like it does with a scraper, but as I start to work in all these funny little shapes, you'll see that it is coming off. And believe me, this is, although tedious, it is a lot easier way to do it than squishing your fingers into all of these little tight areas. You can see just how easily the paintbrush that's with stiff bristles actually gets in there and removes that surface. Doesn't take much at all. And the areas where it's remaining, well, that's where you have to just keep getting it wet and then move on to the next area. But the key to it is you do have to keep using fresh chemical. And you reach the point where the chemical's done its job and it is just brushing off. So just keep working it and keep putting fresh chemical on. In areas like this where it's been quite thick, it'll just take longer before they break down. Okay, so what I'm also using here is a small stainless steel brush. And that, as you will see, although it makes a bit more of a mess, it gets us into those last final little creases. Now that we've got our little areas done, it is time to really get messy. We do that by keeping the surfaces wet and active. And then we have to dive in there with the green scrubbies. And wearing gloves while you're doing this might be considered less hazardous to your health, but it's a pain in the arse. Just remember, keep it all wet and keep working it. Before moving on, I thought I would just take a quick moment here and show you a little bit more up close what your results should look like. Now, when it's time to wipe the product down, it has to be wet in order to remove it. You'll know right away, because if you're using a paper towel and you attempt to start wiping off that leg there, the paper towel is just going to stick to it like glue. So that second leg and the third leg have been buttered up and are ready to start the next phase of stripping them. The reason you have to keep everything wet with fresh material is because all this old material that's on the surface here is carrying all the paint that you have removed. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's been reduced to tiny flecks, and we need the paper towel to absorb and soak up all of this and remove it from the wood before it starts to dry. Because although we have loosened up this paint, if we let this dry, it will dry hard as a rock again. All right, well, there we have it. Our second leg is about done. Okay, well, let's get ready to move on to leg number 3. We are almost done round two. We have a few spots to tidy up. I hope it shows in the film that when I'm applying any more of this material that we've been using, you can see that it's absolutely full of all of the paint flecks that we've already removed. But the material is still working, so I'm going to use it to clean up the rest of the bottom here. May as well use up the material. And give this 20 minutes, wipe everything up. Then we're going to give everything a really good clean and come back and look for the little spots that we may have missed. That's where it's time to get out the dental picks. And we'll use some more of this 3M Scotch Brite pads to take away what's left. Okay, let's let this sit for 20 minutes and we'll come back. I did not bore you with half an hour and half a roll of paper towel moistening and wiping down the complete surface of the table to remove all remnants of the product we were using. It's a slow and tedious part of the job, but once the table starts to dry, you will notice areas that appear as if you have missed them. But what that actually is just flakes of your top coat. Now in this case, it was white, the top coat, so it's fairly easy to pick out those spots that appear as if you missed them. Now, wash down was a mistake I made in part one when I stated wash down with soap and water. What I wash down typically with is TSP, warm water, TSP, and then a fresh water rinse afterwards. So, we are back. It is time to make a little bit of a mess and get on with washing all of this down with a mild concentration of TSP. No, again, I don't have gloves on. I guess it's just all the years of working with things like lacquer thinners. TSP doesn't seem to even give me an itch, but I will say it does bother a lot of people, so maybe gloves would be recommended. Off we go. After 24 hours of drying, it is time for an up-close inspection. The extra attention paid to the tight crevices has paid off. The stiff bristle brush and the small stainless steel wire brush have eliminated any trace of the white paint and, what I suspect, was an original varnish finish. This result is going to make the sanding phase much easier and somewhat quicker. All of that will be covered in part 3.